George Soros is getting banned from more and more countries. In this video, we're going to take a look at the nations across the globe that have officially or unofficially banned Soros and his web of NGOs from their borders. How George Soros is himself admitting that his globalist world is indeed collapsing before his very eyes. And how the rise of nationalist populists that's challenging Soros's new world order is absolutely unstoppable. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you, ready to bring you our latest episode celebrating the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. So if you haven't already done so, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a regular part of this channel that focuses each and every day on optimism and encouragement in the midst of all the defeatist fake news spewed out by our mainstream media. Before we get into it, make sure to click on that link below and head on over to my special website for my Patriot Food Supply. As we saw with the whole pandemic insanity, we certainly cannot wait for an emergency to happen before we respond to one. And no one makes preparing for an emergency more ridiculously easy and affordable than our good friends over at My Patriot Supply. Again, they're simply the best. Their food kits last up to 25 years in storage. They include breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and best of all, they've got a guarantee policy that'll absolutely knock your socks off. And if you act now, you can save $100 off a full 4-week emergency food supply when you click on that link below to my special website. You heard that right, 100 smackers off, so don't wait. I got my food supply. Make sure you get yours. Click on that link below, or go to preparewithsteve.com and save $100 off your very own 4-week emergency food supply today. All right, let's dive right in here. George Soros, the financier par excellence of all things globalism and liberalism, is getting banned from more and more countries. That's right. While so many on the left are decrying the increasing number of governments that are either formally or informally banning Soros, nevertheless, Soros's international unpopularity seems to be increasing by the day. And so what I thought we'd do in this video is sort of follow up on one I did several months back, which detailed 6 nations that have formally banned George Soros from their borders. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add to that a number of other countries that have begun to crack down on Soros's NGOs and other organizations that are getting funded by Soros's international web of nonprofits. So as to encourage all of you to know that Soros is in fact losing. And he's admitted it, by the way. In an interview with National Public Radio, Soros admitted that his open society program of unfettered globalization is currently under tremendous threat. He noted that when he first got involved in politics 40 years ago, what he calls the open society was winning everywhere. What he called closed nationalist societies were opening up, and a great, glorious globalist world was rising. And now, well, Soros's open societies are on the defensive or outright collapsing virtually everywhere. And he's outright admitting this. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at some of the nations that have either officially or unofficially banned George Soros and his web of NGOs from their borders. So let's start in the continent of Europe. And of course, no one has been more of a menace to George Soros's vision of unfettered globalism than the one, the only Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. Back in December of 2018, Soros's Open Society Foundations announced that it had become impossible to work in what they called the repressive atmosphere of Hungary, and that they were indeed picking up and moving their operations to Berlin. Now, this was in response to the massive landslide win of Viktor Orban in their parliamentary elections. It was his 3rd in a row. And he campaigned on what's commonly referred to as the Stop Soros Law, which penalizes all NGOs that seek to undermine Hungary's border security by assisting immigrants and refugees in crossing the border, getting into Hungary. And the penalty, which involved massive fines, taxation, and the like, simply made it impossible for the Open Society Foundations to continue their operations in Hungary. So Viktor Orban also oversaw the expulsion of Soros' Central European University from Budapest. The Hungarian government refused to grant accreditation to the university, which forced them to close their doors and leave Hungary altogether. And then, right around the same time, in August of 2018, The nation of Poland deported a top Soros organizer, and they were able to have her effectively banned from entering into the EU. I believe that the charge was an abuse of what's called the Schengen Information System, and she was considered a threat to national security and public order by Polish officials. Now, in addition to Hungary and Poland, Macedonia has been actively attempting to rid their nation of Soros. The center-right, sort of nationalist right party has made it a priority to, in their words, de-Sorosize Macedonia. A new movement named SOS, or the Stop Operation Soros movement, has been mobilized to first and foremost expose various NGOs financed by Soros, and then eventually to banish such organizations from their nation. And of course, it was widely reported that a couple of years back, Soros and the Open Society Foundations were officially banned from Russia. Russia passed a law that no longer permitted Soros to fund organizations operating within its borders. The Open Society Foundations were considered by Russia a threat to the foundations of the Russian constitutional system and the security of the state, which includes this notion of what Russians call spiritual security. Now, we've talked about this in other videos. It's very fascinating. I found Julie Elkner's research in this area quite helpful. Spiritual security is considered a subset of national security in a number of policy documents issued by the Putin government since 2000. Spiritual security is designed as a primary measure by which traditional Russian values, embodied particularly by the Russian Orthodox Church, can be protected and perpetuated in the midst of globalized assaults, like what we're seeing from Soros and the Open Society Foundations. And so George Soros' active attempt at liberalizing societies, secularizing societies, destroying the centrality of their religious, cultural, and traditional foundations were considered threats to the national security of Russia. And he and his organizations were effectively banned. All right, so that's Europe. But in many ways, what's going on in Europe is nothing in comparison to Asia Minor and the Middle East. But first, I want to personally invite you to our special On the Brink Benefit Conference. It's an online conference featuring me and some guest speakers on Saturday, October 31st. The virtual conference is going to help you think better and therefore feel better about the November 3rd election and, yes, beyond. We'll discover what's really behind the rise of a new conservative age, how nationalism and globalism will continue to face off beyond November, and why nationalist populism is absolutely unstoppable in its battle with liberal left-wing globalism. To make it even better, proceeds are going to benefit Blessings of Hope Food Bank in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which was highlighted by Ivanka Trump in her latest initiative to connect low-income families with America's food suppliers. And for a limited time, we got a special early bird registration discount. So don't wait. Make sure to register today for the On the Brink Benefit Conference. And I look forward to seeing all of you and meeting you virtually in just a couple of weeks. All right, so as promised, let's head on over from Europe over to Asia Minor, as specifically to Turkey. It might surprise you, but before getting kicked out of Hungary and Russia, Soros' Open Society Foundation announced that it was packing up and moving permanently out of Turkey. And this is because of the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who made Soros and the Open Society Foundations a target in his effort to unite the nation around his vision of traditionalist conservatism, in this case Islamic conservatism. Erdogan accused Soros of stoking up division and protest in Turkey, particularly in what are called the Geza Park protests back in 2013. It sparked some of the biggest political challenges to Erdogan's 15-year rule. And the question, of course, was, when all said and done, who was financing these mass demonstrations? And according to Erdogan, you didn't have to look too far to find Soros' fingerprints behind it. And so Erdogan banished Soros from Turkey. And around the same time, the nation of Pakistan ordered George Soros' foundation to close their doors and leave the country, with very little explanation for such actions. Open Society Foundation was forced to pack their bags, leave Pakistan, and the only explanation that I think was ever given was that Soros' registration application had been denied. So they got booted out of Pakistan. So now We've gone from Europe to the Middle East. Now let's go to Southeast Asia and to the Philippines. The nationalist populist president, Rodrigo Duterte, has publicly warned Soros that if he steps foot in his country, that there's actually a bounty on his head in those islands. He blames Soros for crashing the Southeast economy through his ruthless currency speculation. And Duterte has been merciless in his cracking down on drug trafficking in the Philippines, which of course goes against Soros's global attempts to legalize drugs. So the tanking of the economy in the South Pacific, the effort to legalize drugs, needless to say, there's no love lost between Duterte and Soros. And it's not just the Philippines in the Pacific. Singapore has been likened to Viktor Orban's Hungary in terms of its policies towards George Soros. Singapore recently blocked a company from registering with the country precisely because the company was guilty of accepting funds from the Open Society foundations. The company was linked to a local independent news organization there in Singapore, which raised the ire of Singaporean officials who stated very simply, make no mistake, local politics are for Singaporeans alone to determine, not foreign entities like Soros and the Open Society foundations. Finally, let's cross on over to South America and to the nation of Brazil and the wonderful nationalist populist president Jair Bolsonaro. On the day that he was inaugurated as president, Jair Bolsonaro gave his government new powers to monitor and supervise the activities and funding sources of NGOs operating within Brazil. Now, while not targeting Soros specifically, many have recognized that Bolsonaro's concerns that NGOs, in his words, exploit and manipulate Brazilians, which of course parallels the concerns expressed about Soros in all of these other nations that have either formally or informally banned them. People see this as an indirect attack on Soros. So Bolsonaro is putting Soros in notice that his Open Society foundations are going to be closely monitored and watched, and if necessary, shut down if they're deemed a threat to the national security of Brazil. And so all told, Soros is getting challenged by nationalist populist governments quite literally all over the world. And Soros has had to admit, nationalism is winning. This is why he's committed $1 billion to fighting nationalism around the world. But unfortunately for Soros, he's learning the hard way that money cannot replace the love of nation, culture, custom, and tradition. A renewed conservatism is the future, a future which Soros is absolutely powerless to stop. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you will definitely want to check out my latest video. I just uploaded it on how more bombshell revelations are exposing the horrific extent of Jeffrey Epstein's international sex trafficking ring. You're not going to want to miss that. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.